How do you think that would go about with social media and people feeling that they have a right or a freedom to express themselves?
Well, I think they do have a freedom to
Mm.
express themselves. They don't have a right to be heard.
Yeah,
That's the important thing.
yeah,
Uh, there is maybe one exception. That is actually that Trump can't block people's Twitter responses to him because
yeah,
what he's doing is in some sense an official capacity. And
yeah.
it might be that I'm not allowed to block certain messages, for example, comments on my papers. But most
Mm.
of the time, for our sanity, we need to be able to ignore stuff. And we certainly
Mm.
don't want to pay attention to all the bad and crazy stuff.
Mm.
We just need to have better tools for that. And to some extent, we're growing up and learning this the hard way right now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Do you think over the next few years, do you think privacy will be something that people become more and more concerned about? Or do you think that privacy is something that is going to be an idea that my generation and previous generations were very obsessed with, but the newer generations who are brought up with social media, do you think they will care about privacy as much?
They will probably care about privacy, but it's going to be a different privacy.
Mm.
It's not like privacy is something eternal, very obvious and given, but it's
Mm.
changing, it's mutating. The idea
Yeah.
about what needs to be done in secret versus what should be in the open, that
Mm.
is shifting.
Mm.
Partially because of what can be observed, but also partially about what we decide we don't want to see.
Mm.
So I think we are going to have privacy. It's just that it might be about things that the older generations would be very surprised about.
Yeah.
And similarly, actually showing everything you're doing, yeah, that is sometimes a good way of establishing trust.
Mm.
Except that sometimes it isn't, and it's going to depend very much on the domain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I read the book The Circle recently, and The Circle is a book that's, I mean, it's rubbish, but it's got a really interesting point. It's a very sort of pulp
Mhm.
fictiony kind of book, and it's kind of like a more extreme version of Facebook, and kind of looking, oh, if people were constantly on camera all the time, what would they be like? How would they act if there was complete freedom to all information all the time? What would happen? Um, my criticism about that book is that it doesn't go deep enough, in my opinion. I want some nitty gritty, like ooh, um, pulp fictiony book about that sort of stuff. But it was very surface level. But the concept was very interesting to me. That
Yeah.
um, how differently would I act, and how differently would society act if we were all constantly aware of how monitored we are, point one, or if we were very obviously being filmed all the time, how would we react to that? Um,
There is some psychological studies, for example,
mm,
that suggest that people tend to play up moral outrage much more if they think that they're being watched. So
mm,
if I know that I'm getting documented right now, I will perhaps try and to really, really stand for what I'm claiming to believe in, etc., instead of being slightly dodgy in my morals. And that
mm,
might mean, of course, that little old ladies of a neighborhood association might get tremendous power in this monitored world.
mm,
So if there is a moral outrage, a lot of people will want to join in because otherwise they might be the target of the latest outrage.
mm,
So a transparent world could become a very hard world to live in because you get strong force of conformity. But at the
mm,
same time, I think it might go in other directions too, and it's kind of up to us to try to shape it. I think you can get a lot of tolerance when it's very clear how people actually are. That it's
mm,
actually, oh, everybody's doing that. It's very hard to actually hide it.
mm.
It depends a little bit on how the technology gets used and framed in our culture.
Yeah, yeah.